In fact, several months ago, I was in my personal devotional time reading through the book of Genesis, which I highly recommend. It's a great book. But then again, I think that about every book in the Bible. But I want to encourage you, read through that. And as I was reading through the book of Genesis, I began to study, and there was a passage that I read, and I felt like I needed to pray this over myself. And the more I prayed it over myself, the more I thought, man, this might make a great Father's Day message. So months ago, I had this idea of using this passage for a Father's Day message. So I'm going to share it with you today. Grab your Bibles. Turn with me to the book of Genesis, chapter 18. The book of Genesis, chapter 18. I want to talk to you about a dude named Abraham, and he was a father, pretty amazing father, a father to a nation. And if you grew up in church like me, then you might have even started swinging your right arm, left arm. Come on. Anyone? We used to sing the song, Father Abraham had many sons. Right arm, left arm, right. What that had to do with Abraham, we have no idea. But it turned out it was written by someone who worked with kids. We know that. Because the ending of the song goes like this. It's head up, head down, turn around, sit down. Someone worked with kids, wrote that song. It's like, how can we get these third and fourth grade boys to calm down? I know, let's write it into a song. All of us boys are actually sitting down. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I love that song. So Father Abraham, he did have many sons, and he had a whole nation that God birthed out. It's a pretty amazing call. Genesis chapter 12. You don't have to go there. You can just jump right to Genesis chapter 18. But Genesis chapter 12 is the kind of the call for Abraham to step out. And God's like, I'm going to do amazing things through you, Abraham. Those who bless you, I'm going to bless. And those who curse you, I'm going to curse. I mean, it's just going to, and it says that Abraham stepped out and he followed the Lord and God did bless him. Well, then we get into Genesis chapter 18. And they get a visit here in Genesis chapter 18 from three visitors. Now, the dispensation and the way God spoke to his people back in the Old Testament, God still speaks. It's just a little differently today, because even as you go back to the garden, you think about Adam and Eve and how God's presence was there and how God interacted with Adam and Eve, and it's a bit different in the way he interacts with us today. And so it's hard for us to really understand this without getting kind of weirded out, some of us. But just know that there were three literal people that showed up on this day to talk to Abraham. And most scholars would say that one of them was probably God in the form of a man. And then the other two were angelic beings. It's kind of like that angel unaware type thing. And so these three visitors visit Abraham and Sarah. And he's like, come on, let's sit down. Let's eat, a man after my own heart. And let's talk. Let's have some. Just think about the hospitality he shows to these guys, and then of course they begin to say, "Hey, listen, you're going to have a son," and he's kind of like, "Yeah, in my old age." And Sarah, his wife, was in her old age, and it's like, and of course we all know, if you know the story, that Sarah laughed. Now this is where stuff like this in the Bible just cracks me up. I mean, if you even just read it, verse 13 of chapter 18, then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I'll return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. And Sarah was afraid, so she lied to God and said, I did not laugh. And God says, oh, yes, you did. It's in the Bible. Says, yes, you did laugh. And that's kind of where that conversation stops, and they move on in the story. And that's where I want to pick it up. I shouldn't say story, in the fact, in the history. When the men got up in verse 16 to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. Verse 19, for I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised. There's a couple of thoughts here that I think we can draw out of. Though I'm going to specifically talk to fathers, I want to talk to every man and every woman in the house today. I want you all to listen, because I felt like as I've studied this, I felt like there's some specific things we can pull out of this that are applicable, especially in our society today. Things that maybe the society outside of the church isn't saying, but as believers, as those who have put their faith in Christ and want to follow Christ, these are things that we ought to be following and doing. And so the first thing is this, is just, dads, I want you to get something today. I want you to be encouraged with something. In fact, every guy in this room, if you're not a dad, the odds are one day you're going to get married and you're going to be a dad, okay? So this is good stuff for all of us. The first thing that I want you to get, fill this in your notes, God has chosen you. God has chosen you. Verse 19, for I have chosen him. God's chosen you for what? For fatherhood. Of all the people God could have chosen to do what he was getting ready to do through Abraham. To not just birth Isaac or birth a son or a daughter or whatever, but to birth a nation. God said, Abraham, you're the one. And dads, I want you to think about something today. Of all the people that could have had your kids, God chose you. And said, I'm going to entrust you with that young man. I'm going to entrust you with that young lady. God chose you. In fact, in your notes, I think I may even put that in. Of all the people God could have chosen to give, fill in the blank with your kids' names, he chose you. Once you're a dad, you're always a dad. You can be a great dad, or you can be a deadbeat dad. It's your choice, but you will always be your child's dad. God chose you to be the father of those children. And as I was preparing this message, I just felt like there's some of you, you just need to settle that in your heart. That you are chosen by God. And there's not a whole lot of prerequisites for fatherhood, am I right? I mean, I taught my oldest daughter, Ashton, to drive. 50 hours. 40 in daylight, 10 at nighttime. We had to log that prove she drove all these hours. We turned them in to the DMV and prove. I mean, she had to take the written test. She had to take the driving test. And then she got her license, which I must have done a pretty good job at teaching. But do things like, I don't know, becoming a father, is there some kind of a test for that? Is there something you need to pass and says, okay, now you can become a father? No, nada, nothing, right? I mean, in fact, the government says, oh, you're a father? Great. Here's a $1,000 tax credit. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Some of you aren't getting that. You need to talk to your tax professional there. And once your kid turns 18, then you lose that. Ashton, about a year. She just had to get older. But here's the deal. There's really no prerequisites to fatherhood. It's just you're a father. And for some of you, that may be overwhelming. For some of you, it may be something that stresses you out. But I just want to encourage you, as a godly father, as a man of God, God wants to empower you to be the father. Oh, AJ, I'm looking at you, man. Alex, you are just weeks away from being a dad. I mean, you're already a dad. There's a baby inside. But I'm talking to you who has yet to even see the face of your baby, right? I'm talking to I'm not going to say any, but our seasoned saints dads that are here. Yeah, you know who, okay, Nate raised his hand. Okay, those of you, it doesn't matter what position of fatherhood you're in. Can I just tell you, the Holy Spirit wants to empower you to speak into the life of your kids and to lead your kids. He chose you. He chose you to be their dad. And here's the good news. The Holy Spirit, God, is big enough to help you to love that little toddler and to discipline them the way they need to be lovingly. The Holy Spirit, God, is big enough to help you be patient in that phase when you just look at your son and say, son, you stink, go take a bath. You look at your daughter and say, why are you crying again? The Holy Spirit's big enough to give you wisdom on how to parent that. He's big enough to help you wade your way through the teen years of ups and downs and the affirming of your child's faith. So as they head to that career or college, they know what they believe and why they believe it. God's big enough to help you parent from afar as your kids are out on their own, rightfully making their own decisions. And He can give you, listen to me, parents, you're always going to be mom and dad. Dad, you're always going to be dad. And you might think they're out of the house or you're away from them, maybe because of other situations of life. Your kids are living with mom in another state or over here or over there. Let me just encourage you with something today. The Holy Spirit's creative enough to empower you and encourage you and give you direction on how to continue to speak into the life of your kids no matter where they're at, even if it's just at times just through prayer. God wants to use you, fathers. God chose you. There's a call on you. He's chosen you. God has chosen you. He will empower you to do what He needs you to do if you call on Him, if you rest in Him. Every dad in this place, you'd be lying if you didn't admit that there were times in your fatherhood when you just I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to do. In this situation, and let me tell you, that's exactly where God wants you just to turn to Him and say, God, okay, come on, you bless me with these children. In fact, you chose me to be their dad. And so therefore, I'm trusting you to bring wisdom to me to know how to lead them. Second thing that I throw out to you is this. God chosen, God called you. God has called you, Dad. Called you to what? Well, let's just let Scripture, verse 19, for I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him. That you will lead, that you will direct your household well. God called Abraham to be the father, the director, the leader. And Jesus has called you. He's put this mantle on you. You study the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament. And you see that the mantle of leadership, of headship, of the leader of the home, God desires you, men. You. It's not because you have all the answers. It's just the office that God has put you in your family. He's called you to lead. This doesn't mean that it's not a joint effort with you and your wife, leading your kids to Jesus, leading your kids to grow spiritually, leading your kids in their life's direction that God has for them. But fathers, the ball is in my court. It's in your court to make sure that leadership is happening. Let's make sure we're taking this seriously. I want to challenge every dad, spirit, soul, and body. Are you leading your kids? Are you helping guide them and lead them and direct them and making sure that that's happening? You are not only chosen by God, but you're called by God. It's the office you hold. You've been called to direct and to lead. And let me encourage you with something. You've heard people say this before, I'm sure, but God doesn't always call the equipped, right? He equips the called. And so you're in a great spot. If you stay humble before the Lord, you're in a great spot. Say, God, you got to help me here because I don't have all the answers. Help me. I know that you've chosen me. I know that you've called me. Scott, help me understand this a little further. Well, dads, just listen. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know you already know this, but let me just encourage you again. When God called me to lead this church, He called me to be the pastor of this church. Now, that doesn't mean I do everything in this church. In fact, the other day, there was a little spill or something, and I needed to clean it up. I had no idea what squirt bottle to use in the janitor's custodian closet. I mean, I had to call Jason. Jason, which one of these do I use? I just want to clean off this table. That's all I want to do. There are certain things, and I'm fine with that because I don't have to do it all, right? I don't have to do it all. And so, this morning, if you go upstairs in the great room, which is our older kids' church class, we've got a teacher in there. If you go into group 56, if you go over here on the other side of this wall, what we call the gallery, if you go into our infant nursery I'm not up there teaching. I'm not in there teaching. But I can tell you because God's called me to lead this church, I knew it's wisdom would say it's not a good idea just to throw a bunch of kids in a room and say, now teach yourselves about Jesus. Enjoy. Of course I wouldn't do that. But years ago, we put, who's now, right now, my wife, Megan, in a position of leadership over all those classes. And she has teams of people that she lifts up, that she encourages, and puts those teams in place. And so now they're teaching. Listen, leadership, being the leader of your home doesn't mean you're doing everything. But it just means that you'll step up. And you'll take that role seriously. You say, I want to make sure, spirit, soul, and body, that spiritually my kids are in a place where not only are we in a church that's alive and well, but I am spiritually pouring into my kids. I'm taking personally the call that I have to mentor and train my kids up in the way they ought to go. That's my call as a dad, and the church comes alongside and helps me to do that. But that's my main call. I just had dinner last night with one of our great missionaries to Madagascar. They're just driving through, and they texted me last night about 4 o'clock and said, hey, we just arrived at the Amish Disneyland, otherwise known as the Essen House to them. And it's funny. You go to Madagascar, you think lemurs, you think all the things but they just love the Essen House. They love coming here. And so they came and stayed, and we went to dinner with them last night. And he was just talking about his kids. He's just looking at them. It's like, we only have a couple years with these kids. And he was talking about their schooling. He's talking about how some missionaries, I'm not going to go into the debate of this, but they send their kids to boarding schools and those type of things. Even at young ages, they send them to boarding schools. And we'll see in 6 months. And he's like, there's no way I could do that. There's no way I could send my kids. I only have them for a few years. You see, he understands he's chosen by God. He's called by God to pour into those kids' lives. He's that calling is on him. Guys, listen, spiritually, are we pouring into our kids? Megan and I were just having this discussion last night. I need to ratchet it up. There's times when I think I do really good, and there's times when I'm just kind of coasting along. I got great kids, but I need to be I need to do something to pour into my kids. Spirit, soul, emotions, their mind, their intellect, their heart. Am I ministering to that? And body. Do my kids have a roof over their head? Do they have clothes and they have food in their mouths? I mean, really, am I taking care of those needs? Just remember, dads, fathers, just remember 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. We got to take this seriously. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So we understand that. Listen, the pressure of the finances of your house, the pressure of providing for your home, guys, let me just encourage you. You take that on. You take that on you. God created you to go out there and work and carry that load. Now, wait a minute, Scott. Hold on here. You saying women can't have a career? You saying women can't work? Not saying that at all. What I'm saying is the bulk of the pressure of providing for these things, God created you, gentlemen. God created you to provide for your family. He put you there in that family to be that provider. And I want to encourage you, do that. I'm going to talk more about that later on in the book of Ephesians. But Scott, I'm not so sure I'm up for this call. Scott, I don't know if I can do everything you just said. Spirit, soul, and body. Holy cow, I'm not very good at all that. Well, here's the good news. That's why we have the Holy Spirit here to teach us. That's why we have the Word of God here to point us, and the Holy Spirit illuminates the Word, touches us. That's why, and if it wasn't me, it might sound a little bit less awkward, but I'm just going to say this. That's why God has given you a pastor who can speak truth into your life week after week after week. That's why God has given you this local church to where you can do life with other believers, and some of our older dads can come alongside you younger dads and say, you can do this. I know, I've been there, done that. It's tough stuff, but it's worth every single minute in the long run. Dads, I just want to encourage you. Understand the fact that God's chosen you and God's called you. Now, the third thing is this. God has shown you. God has shown you. What has God shown you? Well, He's shown you the plan. Verse 19, for I've chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and what is just. He's shown you the plan by keeping the way of the Lord by doing what is right and what is just. This is what I was praying over myself for about a week or two as I was doing this in my devotions. God, help me to lead my family to what is right and what is just. You see, God knew Abraham well. He knew this guy. Abraham wasn't perfect. In fact, if you read the whole story of Abraham, he had this little issue with lying, specifically about his wife. And she must have been a looker because other guys wanted her. Now, you can just read about that. He wasn't perfect. But the Bible says that this was a guy who's like a friend of God. I mean, Abraham is an amazing man of faith. And so we understand that. And God knew that Abraham would lead his family in a way that would be right and just. And I believe that's a great challenge for every dad in this place. What does that look like? In fact, the ESV version, English Standard Version of the Bible says it this way, that, "For I have chosen him that he may command his children's household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice." By doing righteousness and justice. By doing this. So what does it look like? Doing what is right, doing what is righteous. Dad, I just want to encourage you. First of all, doing righteousness consists of being forgiven, justified, and accepted by God through faith. Doing righteousness, doing what is right, listen, it's all starts with you yielding yourself to Christ and receiving salvation through the cross. That's where it all starts. And then it continues on as you and I are embracing what God has for us in righteousness, living holy and righteous before Him. And so I just throw that out to you, Dad. How are we doing? How are we doing at living righteously before our kiddos? Dads, listen, your wife will play just as big of a role in leading your kids to righteousness as you will, but don't neglect your role. You take the lead in making sure your kids are in church. You take the lead in making sure that your kids are growing in faith. You take the lead in making sure that that your wife and your kids are in a healthy spot. And if they're not, man, I want to challenge you. Take it upon yourself to fast, pray, do whatever you have to do. Step it up. Step it up and say, God, I need to see my wife back to health. I need to see my kids back to health. I want to see them, direct them. And I just got to hit pause just for a second, because there's some of you that are in many different situations. Some of you, you know you've messed up. Listen, there's no perfect dad in this room. There's not one perfect dad in this room. And some of you, you know that you've messed up. Listen, now's a great place to start, right here. I don't care where your kids are at in their age range. Right now's the time to start. There's others of you, you're single moms. And you're hearing everything I'm saying, and you're like, but Scott, my kids don't have that dad in their life right now, and so what? Am I just like stuck here? Psalm 68:5 says he's a father to the fatherless, a defender of the widows. Can I just encourage you with that? Trust that God is going to bring into your kid's life other men of God. They may never replace their true father, their birth father, but God, through this local body of believers, can connect you with other men of God that can speak life in your kids' lives. I just want to encourage you with that. It's not all, you're just like, wow, I might as well not even try. No. Listen, let's trust God that God's going to bring somebody in that's going to teach them righteousness, how to live right before God. I know most of you men, it's typically a much more natural thing for your wife to be the teacher of all things God in your kids. Listen, my wife's very gifted at this. It just seems a little more natural for my wife to sit on the bed and talk with the girls about spiritual things. But dads, can I just encourage you? That doesn't remove the call in your life, and that God has empowered you, and He's chosen you, and He's given you, He's shown you what to do to speak in your kids' life as well. The funny thing about our kids, it seems like they always want to have those deep conversations at 11 o'clock at night, which tends to be the time when this old man is tired. So we're going to find another time to do that. But the challenge is, let's make sure we're finding time to do that, gentlemen. Let's make sure we're finding time to speak in the life of our kids, righteousness, holiness, helping them see that, being the example for them. Then the other thing he says is do justice. Doing justice. Do what is just. My oversimplified definition of acting justly is this: do the right thing every time. Every time. So how's that working out, fellas? Let me just talk to you for a second here. At work, I mean, do you treat people justly? Especially those that are, in a sense, under you? Do your kids hear you speak about others in a just manner? What about those that are the least among us, the poor, the destitute, others? How do you treat them? How do your kids see you loving on those people? Are you full of justice? Are you treating them justly? You know, one of my shows, I used to record it, DVR, whatever it's called. I don't do it anymore. But every once in a while I'll watch it. It's American Pickers. Anyone else ever watch that? It's just one of those things where they go and they drive along and they stop and they're like, oh, this guy's got a bunch of old stuff. Can I buy some of your old junk? And I don't know why it so blesses the socks off of me, but when I see these guys go in there, and these guys, this is like their business, right? I mean, this is what they do for a living, so they know all this. And someone will be like, well, how much do you want for this, whatever this is? And the person will say, oh, I don't know, maybe $100. And then every once in a while, one of the other dudes, Laurel and Hardy, they'll say, they look a lot like them, but they'll say, oh, you know what? I can't give you $100 for that. I'll give you $200 though. And I'm sitting there, yeah, you go. And they explain this because that's worth a whole lot more than $100. And I can't rightfully give you $100 when it's worth even more than that. So I'll give you $200 for that. Of course, they're going to sell it for $400 and make $200 off of it. But that's why? Why do they do that? It's the just thing. It's the right thing. So listen, some of you sitting in this room, do you owe anyone anything? Have you done the just thing and have you paid it back? I mean, do your kids see you in every area of your life doing the just thing, standing up for what is right, what is just? I think it's interesting how those are the two things that God just really just nails. It says, for I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and what is just. God has chosen you. God has called you. God has shown you. And the last thing I'll throw out to you is this, is I believe God has promised you. What has he promised me? Well, at the very least, he's going to bring his promises about in your life. Look at that last verse, or last part of verse 19. By doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. And that came about. We know the history of all that. It had its issues, but we know that out of Abraham came just a great nation. And we saw that. So what promises are you talking about, Scott? What promises are there for the Father that sits here today? You know, as you go all the way back even to Genesis chapter 12, and God promised, I'll make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I'll make your name great, and you'll be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you. I will curse those, whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Hello. I mean, that's an amazing promise. And so, Scott, what are the promises that I can stand on? What are the promises as a dad, as a father, that I can hold on to and know that God's with me? Well, here, you need strength. Can I just encourage you with 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9? My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Men, I would never tell you not to be strong, because I believe you need to be strong and courageous. We need men who are strong in Jesus, though. Can I just encourage you? Let's learn to be weak in a sense where we yield. God, I can't do this. It's built into you to have a work ethic. It's built into you to want to provide. It's built into you to take care of your own. But ultimately, let's make sure that in our man pride, if you will, that we don't push God right out of the equation, but that we come to him in humility. We come to him in weakness, And in that weakness, his power is made perfect. In that weakness, Jesus shines through and we don't. Think about Philippians 4:13. We sang about it a few moments ago. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The Apostle Paul, he knew what it was to have plenty. He knew what it was to be in want. He knew all of that. He understood that. He said it because of that. I've learned that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Can I just speak that over every father in this room? Walk in his strength. Walk in his strength. Walk in his wisdom. Grasp hold of that. You say, I need wisdom. Well, I've already talked about this from James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. Listen, if you need wisdom about something, God desires to freely give it. You say, Scott, I'm still standing here waiting. I need wisdom. Keep praying. Keep praying. I was talking to another pastor friend this week. I don't understand it, but you go to the Old Testament, and Jacob wrestled with God. I mean, God, here's this blessing that was rightfully Jacob's to have, but Jacob, in a sense, he wrestled with God, and it's a story in the Old Testament, and you can read about it some other time. But the idea, and I know in my lifetime, there have been times when God tested me. He's like, how bad do you want this? How bad do you want to see this happen? And I know that it wasn't like dangling a carrot in front of a donkey, but it was close to it, and I was the donkey, right? I mean, it was like God was like, I'm teaching you perseverance here. I'm teaching you to keep going. And dads, I just want to encourage you, whatever it is you're facing, fathers, whatever it is that's in front of you, can I just tell you, keep going, keep pressing, keep asking God for wisdom and direction, because he is one who wants to freely give it to you. Otherwise, his word's not true. And we know that's not true. We know the word of God is truth. He's the way, the truth, and the life. Can I just encourage you, dads? You need wisdom, call on him. When you face difficult problems, Hebrews 4:16 says, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in our time of need. Whatever the situation you're facing, the Bible promises as we call on him, as we draw near to him, he draws near to us. These are promises, guys. These are promises that every one of us can stand on and hold on to. God has promised you that he's not going to leave you hanging on the Father thing, right? God hasn't called you and chosen you and shown you he hasn't done all this just to let you just kind of flounder. He's called you, he's chosen you, because he wants to empower you to be the dad that your kids need in every stage of their life. Now let me tell you something really, really encouraging. Remember that whole bit I read in Genesis chapter 12 about how God called Abram, leave your country, your people, your father's house, and go. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great. You'll be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you. You remember all that? And then Abram left, it says, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Maybe not the best of companions, but he chose them, so they went. Abram was 75 years old when he set out for Haran. He took his wife, and he traveled. And you'd think, God spoke. God gave this promise. Woohoo! We're going with God. I'm stepping out in faith. I'm leaving everything behind. I'm going after God. You think all's going to be well, right? But just soon after that, you get to verse 10 in that same chapter. And what's it say? Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was so severe. Listen, dads, as we embrace the promises of God, understand that doesn't mean it's all going to just be roses, right? You know that. And so the challenge is this. When you hit that hard time, when maybe it's the marriage that's looking like this, or maybe it's a relationship with one of your kids, or maybe it's a job. Maybe the job you thought was your perfect job all of a sudden wasn't so perfect, it was more annoying than perfect. Maybe the plan that you felt was so much God. Listen, I've been there. You've heard me tell the stories a million times. It is still hard for me to stand up and publicly say that it wasn't the will of God for me to be the pastor at Angola Assembly of God Church. I was there for almost 4 years. I prayed, I fasted, I sought the Lord. And in 1999, when my senior pastor announced his retirement, I can tell you in my heart, I just really felt like that's where God wanted us to stay. Did man get in the way? Did I miss God? Did they miss God? I have no idea. To this day, I don't know what the answer is. But in 2000 of January, as associate pastor, we resigned. I resigned from a position that I felt I was just so sure it was the will of God that we stuck around. But we resigned. We saw the handwriting on the wall. It was made very clear to us. They weren't going to choose me. Okay, then I'm going to resign and move on. And I just want to tell you something. That was one of the lowest points in my life, just trying to figure out, not so much even the whole situation as much as questioning, God, can I even hear from you anymore? I mean, God, I was so sure that I had heard from you on this one. And for months, I couldn't even go to church without crying. I'm talking to me, not Jason. Jason cries all the time. No, I'm just joking. No, he's just more in touch with his emotional side. No, I'll keep going. No, I'm serious. We'd go to church Sunday after Sunday, and I just would sit there and just, I couldn't get through worship without crying because I was just so hurt. I was like, God, I thought so sure this was your will. And so we just kept throwing it back on there. God, okay. You have to decide in those moments, gentlemen, are you going to lead your family or are you going to turn from God and run from them? Every one of you will have a defining moment in your life that's going to look something like that. If you haven't yet, it will come. And my charge to you men, my challenge to you men, is don't run from God, but run to God. Don't just curse that thing, that trial that God's put inside, but embrace it and say, okay, God, whatever you want to teach me, I'm going to lead my family through this. And for me, leading my family through this meant that for several months I cleaned toilets. I worked for a janitorial service as we're trying to figure out what the next step was. And I can tell you this, I think I'm like 10 times more fulfilled having come and been able to start Pathway later on in 2000. We started Pathway, the services we started December, but I started full-time in August of 2000, just praying, putting together the plans for this church. Listen to me. I know that I'm much more fulfilled having stuck it out. And I don't know why, I wasn't even planning on sharing that story, but I felt like there's some of you guys, you need to understand that. There's going to come times where your family needs you. Don't turn to the sins of your past. Turn to God. Trust Him to give you wisdom and direction, and He'll give it to you. He's the one who freely gives. God has chosen you. God has called you. God has shown you, and He's promised you He's not going to leave you, dads. I just want to encourage you with that word today. Just like Abraham, God's good.